Are they listening?
They are connected to me and can see and hear what I show them. My mind is open right now.
Good. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for getting us in this mess. I know I've taken you from your homes once already, and you guys are suddenly in the middle of an ancient war, still trying to unlock the Elder Power in the Green Bowl and fighting to be the Chosen One. Although I must say, it is actually the Chosen Many because every year someone new seems to be chosen.
Franklin, we get it.
Yes. Sorry. I was a mad scientist at one time.
I saw. You've been a victim of the shadows multiple times. Something to keep an eye on.
You can trust me, Dream Priest. I loathed the shadows, but my anger let them in. They seemed to feed on our trauma, our pain. I remember both of my lives and my original world died. When we defeated the shadows with the power of the elders, remember the Titans drank from the cup. It actually created a new dimension, the idea that we were in a future that would never exist because all pieces of Obsitans Abyssus were trapped. It meant our world was a new timeline. Everyone was sent back to the timeline where the shadows didn't destroy the future, and the elders sealed the dimension from all points in space. But then, Obsitans Abyssus escaped, and the shadows are quietly scheming. Why are we in the void? Why not just kill us?
All valid questions. There's more to it than just the shadows wanting to torment us. And these transmissions, what do they mean?
That's the least of our worries. It seems that in my quest to contact Constance, through your thoughts, I stumbled upon something.
Anomalies, dimensions with two versions of the same person, but not everyone.
Yes. And the twins are complete opposites. I'm talking good and pure evil.
Scary doppelgangers. I saw that movie.
That's not the strangest thing, though.
Go on.
These twins, they exist in another time from one another. No one knows that they're twins. Ooh, another transmission?
It would seem so. Do you hear that, everyone? I think it comes from the future. What dimension? I don't know. Listen.
Toronto, 2235. The capital of the North American Alliance. Like the Super Bowl, it changes cities every year. This time it's in Toronto for the first time in 50 years. A joyous occasion for the people of the city as the center of the World Fest rages on. Not sure what I'm talking about. Still lost. Still just a vapor diffusing into the city. These places don't make sense, but yet I search for a key. I search for an odd place that is both real and a dream. But why? My spine is somehow cold, but I've no body. But my stomach, I feel it, turning. Yet, I still am just a mist, gently touching the land. The Great Maple Syrup Riots followed the first ever Queen City Hogs football championship in the North American Football League. The Hogs famously chugged maple syrup in celebration during a national shortage due to warm summers and too many forest fires. I ignore these strange ideas. Clearly an echo latching itself onto my sentience. But I struggle to know. Who am I? Why am I trapped in this loop? Time to time, place to place, searching for what? Toronto, 2235. 70 years since the great renovation of the CN Tower. The hope was to control weather. It only delayed the inevitable. The Queen City Hogs were founded at that same time. The tower, it screams at me. It must be important, but it's not safe. The key is in danger. I am in danger. Is anyone even listening? Wait. Yes. Those trapped. Mario. Listen.
The transmission's going both ways.
What's it mean?
That something is using me to reach beyond the void.
Welcome to the quest for the Green Ball, lost in Dreamlands, and welcome to the first of 8 key out-of-divisional matchups that'll shape the playoff race in the next 2 months. Only one team is winless so far, and only one matchup this next week features 2 2-1 teams. So we are guaranteed to have at least one 3-1 team next week, but the rest could be complete chaos. For those 0-3 and 1-2, this week is going to be crucial. No one wants to start the season with 3 or 4 losses. Obviously it's going to be hard work if you do, because you got to dig out of that hole, and we got bye weeks looming in week 5 and beyond. One of those 1-2 teams will be in our next as the clash at Demonhead travels to take on 2-1 the Overcomers in Toronto 22-35. The Overcomers, in their second straight game of the week, look to be the first team of the season to win 2 primetime matchups, and they come in with a 53.8% chance to win. This team was ranked number 1 in the power rankings at one point and are still in a good spot according to the computers at number 5. The Clash at Demonhead lost a tough one last week, but were also high in the rankings after week 1, looking to get back to that strong play with Jordan Love expected back. Running backs have been key for both teams, and I don't expect that to change here. Derrick Henry versus Jonathan Taylor is the top matchup, with Aaron Jones versus Brian Robinson also being important. The Overcomers will also have Devin Singletary going at the running back position, a solid RB2 so far. Defense looks to be on the side of the overcomers, with Dallas getting a good matchup and Baltimore having to face a strong Buffalo offense. CJ Stroud versus Love at quarterback is one to watch. Love was drafted high by the clash at Demonhead and ended up being the sixth best quarterback last season, but will he be limited after his injury? Stroud, on the other hand, has not dominated, but gets a matchup with a Jacksonville team that has no answers and might be seeing the last chance for their head coach after a horrendous start. The kicker battle is also a key area, with Brandon Aubrey being the best kicker in the league so far, with an amazing matchup. But Braden Narveson gives the Overcomers hope to steal a point for every Packer touchdown and to possibly get some field goals in what could be a battle with Minnesota. Wide receivers Garrett Wilson and Jamison Williams will most likely need touchdowns, but Khalil Shakir still needs to show consistency on the other side. Trey McBride is an expected advantage at tight end for the clash at Demonhead, but the Jaguars did allow Kincaid to score last week, meaning Dalton Schultz could get some opportunities. Touchdowns by tight ends are obviously going to be huge and usually change the projections mid-match. But there are two players I'm watching here. For the road team, the clash at Demonhead, I look at wide receiver Jaden Reed. Reed struggled the last 2 weeks with Jordan Love injured, still getting touches but only being on the field for just over half the snaps, compared to being on the field for over 70% of the snaps in week 1. Reed is a dynamic threat, kind of like a Deebo Samuel. He can run the ball, mostly on end arounds, and can make explosive runs on screens and short slants as well. Reed can also be a deep threat, which gives him multiple ways to possibly score touchdowns, something he seems to do more often than people think. Last season, Reed had 10 touchdowns and had multiple touchdown games twice. He actually had double-digit fantasy points in 7 of his last 9 games. He was a very solid wide receiver too. And he looked good again in week 1 with Jordan Love under center. Obviously, he had that 171-yard game with 2 touchdowns. He was targeted 6 times in that game, also had 1 rushing attempt that resulted in a 33-yard score. So obviously, he was 7 touches is obviously going to get you some points. Clearly, his floor was bottomed out with Malik Willis changing the offensive strategy to suit that quarterback's strengths. With Love back, Reed is expected to get back to his usual dynamic self and to be on the field more often. If Reed could once again make big plays, the clash at Demonhead will get a massive boost at the flex position. If Love struggles or doesn't play again, because he's still going to be questionable most likely, Reed might be limited again, which obviously could be the finishing blow in another expected low-scoring battle. The Overcomers also have a wide receiver that needs to be watched. Waiver pickup Jawan Jennings. Jennings is a beneficiary of Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle injuries at the moment. Kittle might come back this next week, but he did have a hamstring injury, so we'll see. And of course, Brandon Ayuk got paid and decided to sit on his mountain of cash instead of making plays the last few weeks. One thing to keep in mind, though, Ayuk was clearly the one that defenses looked to stop last week, so Brock Purdy found Jennings multiple times for big plays. Purdy also didn't see Ayuk when he was wide open for a potential big play at least a few times in that game against the Rams, something that can be corrected on film. Still, Jennings had a monster game last week with 175 yards and 3 scores. It cannot be ignored. The big thing being his 85% snap share and 12 targets. Jennings hasn't been consistent, though, and game script and defenses now understand they need to stop him too. And that will most likely lead to less fantasy points against New England than he had this past week. The 49ers tend to always go with a hot hand, so the first quarter will probably be huge if Jennings will get going again. There is the problem that New England is completely awful on offense, so a big lead might mean less chances in the pass game in the second half. It could become the Jordan Mason show. But if Jennings continues to get a high number of targets, he will always have a chance to make plays and get touchdowns. The Overcomers will probably be happy with 10 to 15 points here. But if Jennings suddenly is the one that is the odd man out in the offense, or if he doesn't score, it could be a single-digit nightmare in a game where points will be at a premium. I expect this one to be so close that it will come down to the final player on Monday night. But Sunday night could also be a clincher for the Overcomers, depending on what's going on. So those last two games will be pretty huge. This one could have a massive tiebreaker implication by the end of the season as well. Of course, there are some other interesting out-of-divisional matchups coming up this week. Let's get to them in the best of the rest. Once again on the line as 0-3 Air Jordan searches for their first win and the chance to finally claim this rivalry award as they travel to Moscow 24-35 to take on the 2-1 elite Mother Tuckers. The Mother Tuckers still alive to repeat their amazing 2022 run, coming with a 68.4% chance to win. Air Jordan is praying that Kenneth Walker returns to give some stability at running back, especially since that could be an area to make up ground with Bijan Robinson and Devon Achane not exactly lighting it up right now. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Devontae Adams are considered advantages for Air Jordan over DJ Moore and Devontae Smith. Tony Pollard gives the Mother Tuckers the edge at the flex position. Air Jordan needs Patrick Mahomes to outduel Dak Prescott as well, or it could get out of hand very quick. 1-2 low-key Lebowski Thor travels to Mexico City 1955 to face off with 2-1 the Stellar Bitches. Lebowski Thor has a 54.5% chance to win as the Stellar Bitches have either Joe Mixon or Cam Akers after a trade, so they won't miss out regardless of the injury. Alvin Kamara will look to gain a big advantage over a weakened running back duo on the other side, and Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Zay Flowers will be key. Jake Ferguson versus Pat Freiermuth and the 49ers versus the Jets defense look to be other key areas to watch. And don't forget about Jalen Hurts versus Joe Burrow. Hurts didn't do so well last week while Burrow went nuts. That could be the Stellar Bitch's way to possibly get the upset. 2-1 Minerva's Minions hosts defending champion 1-2 Green Acres in the next matchup. The Minions, who have a 56.4% chance to win, need another good game by Saquon Barkley. But the main thing is that Anthony Richardson must outplay Derek Carr and for Stephon Diggs to get the touchdowns over Nico Collins. Travis Etienne versus Rachaad White and the Chiefs versus Vikings defense battles should also loom large. 1-2 Risky Business looks to get back on track, but has a tough road matchup against 2-1 hosts, More Than Conquerors. More Than Conquerors has a 56.7% chance to win, with Kyler Murray versus Sam Darnold being a very important spot in the lineup. Kyren Williams versus Jordan Mason, Justin Jefferson versus CeeDee Lamb, and Travis Kelce versus Mark Andrews are other key areas. Also, the 7th round defense pick by More Than Conquerors, the Cleveland Browns, is now on Risky Business's team. That is certainly an area to watch. And lastly, in our de facto second huge matchup of the week, we get a massive battle between the number 1 and number 3 ranked teams in the power rankings as 2-1 Pounders hosts 2-1 Remember the Titans. Pounders enters with a 56.7% chance to win, and both teams have options on their benches. Remember the Titans is loaded at wide receiver, and Pounders has to choose the right quarterback out of the 3 options. Right now, Josh Allen versus Brock Purdy, Jahmyr Gibbs versus Breece Hall, Malik Neighbors and Jamar Chase versus Chris Godwin and James Cook, and the Texans versus Steelers defenses are the places to watch. This should be an exciting week. Week 4, of course, marks a point in the season when offenses in the NFL start to heat up a little bit with teams and players getting comfortable in systems as if they played the entire preseason together. We can certainly see another number 1 ranking change in our league, but can also see the number 1 spot solidified as we have that big game that we mentioned. The rest of the rankings will probably shift a lot in the middle. How many 3-1 teams will we have? We're only guaranteed 1. It's also possible we have 10 2-2 teams, which would be pretty wild. Chaos is certainly starting to take hold. That's the show for the week. Hope you enjoyed it. Next week begins the bye-week marathon with some major byes right away. We will see how that starts to affect our standings as we move forward. Before you go, remind yourself of those standings. Until next time, salud.